Bar for Bar EP reviews. Mavi, End of the Earth. End of the Earth is the latest EP from Charlotte, North Carolina rapper Mavi. This follows his very well-received album Let the Sun Talk from 2019 and is actually the first project from Mavi that I've listened to. Over the past few years, I've heard his name come up in conversations about other rappers like Mike or Medhane and even Earl Sweatshirt. And after listening to this project, the comparisons make a lot of sense. Mavi brings a fairly, lo-fi sort of sound to his music, and it just feels like he raps with a purpose. This EP is fairly short, at a total runtime of 14 minutes with only 5 tracks, but it's definitely dense. We start off with the track Time Travel. As an intro track, this does a great job of setting the tone for the project, but it's also a really good introduction to Mavi as a rapper. Starting the track off with the chorus allows Mavi to let the listeners know what the track and project is going to be about before really getting too into it. Here I feel it's safe to assume that this track is about time travel, but not in the sense that we're accustomed to. The time travel here is just about going through life because as we progress we're essentially time traveling. It could also be seen as a reflection of sorts because when you're looking back on things that you've done, or if you're looking forward to where you're going, your mind is time traveling. At the beginning of his verse, there's a few things that he says that he can't do, which is kind of funny because later on the last track, Town Crier, he says, "My daddy taught me can't is a cuss word." Just funny. Near the beginning of his verse, he also says, "I can't tell you everything we've been getting as of late. I still got brothers and mothers look in the face," which to me just sounds like a response to people trying to get to know more about him or wanting to open up more in his music. He can't tell you everything though because he doesn't want to put it out there, it's just his family's business, or it could be things that he is not ready to share with everyone and having to explain to his family. The rest of the verse is fun though, with all the references that he makes from the movie Like Mike, to Avatar The Last Airbender, to Thor's Hammer and Mjolnir. The track ends with an outro from Mavi's grandmother, which according to an interview with Audiomack, is to show that he's just a regular person. I thought it was cute though, because she just sounds like all grandmothers making sure that you've eaten something. Next we have 1,000 Miles. This track follows a similar sort of thought as Time Travel in terms of reflection. Mavi's walked another 100,000 miles and is looking back at the things that he's accomplished and done in that time. We see this reflection throughout the beginning of his verse, but also with the line about stopping in DC for funnel. I like this line because he's going back to DC for nostalgia purposes, but the way he says nostalgic reminded me of the Pusha T song Nostalgia, which is wild because Pusha T is from the DMV area, which includes DC. I'm not sure if that was intentional, but still neat. I also enjoyed the bit about playing unreleased music and smacking people for not head nodding. It's a funny image for sure, but I get where he's coming from. It's kind of like when you've got a new favorite song that you think is just amazing and you play it for somebody, but they either think it's just kind of mid or they don't pay attention to it and just start talking throughout the whole song. The ending chorus ties things back to reflection with asking how God would feel about all of this. The track ends in a very similar manner as well to the first, with a brief skit talking about true religion jeans. Having this sort of ending to a track is interesting because you'd think that it'd mess up the flow, but instead it actually adds to it. Right as 1,000 Miles fades out, Methods fades in. This track has Mavi tapping into his mayor bag, where he's trying to master his municipality and he is giving us his methods of doing so. However, we get more into what's going on around him and where he's from, rather than what he may be doing, with mentions of the murder rate being up. He does also get into a bit of the things that he doesn't condone, like killing. The song is also different from the other tracks that we've heard thus far because there's more drums than others and it hits harder for sure. The way it comes into, as he's saying "I don't condone," really works well. This track, like the others so far, ends with a skit, which is kind of aggressive in nature, but also not, if that makes sense. It has a very similar vibe to the track, which makes it fit well for sure. It's kind of like, that guy on TikTok and Instagram Reels where he's just being overly aggressive, but also just being super nice about it. It kind of reminded me of that. The EP begins to wrap up with Life We Live, which is also the shortest track on here. The track is pretty self-explanatory and goes through Mavi's thoughts on the life that we live. Again, the track starts off with a feeling of reminiscence, thinking about the constants in his life, like the friends that he's had for years, but also talking about the things that are going on now. He's been getting a little bit more attention since the release of his album Let the Sun Talk, but to him, it feels like company's fucking with me just to seem a little woke. This track does also feel like a good follow-up to Methods sonically, because the beat is a bit heavier here as well. Honestly, through my many listens of this, I keep forgetting that there's actually 5 tracks because the sequencing is so good. It kind of blends in a bunch of the tracks together. End of the Earth wraps up with the track Town Crier. This track starts off almost immediately with Mavi just going off. Everything he says here is being said with a sense of urgency, but he's really just talking about himself and his own thoughts. The urgency kind of makes sense given the title of this track, since a town crier was generally the person that would yell, "Hear ye, hear ye," and then make an announcement of sorts. The track starts off kind of negative, where he's saying, "Prove to me I exist, prove to me that I'm good," which is a feeling that shifts more into ambition as it progresses. He brings up a lot of the things that he feels he needs to prove to himself. By the time we get to the outro, he repeats, "I don't think it's shit I can do," which leads to him eventually saying, "My daddy taught me can't is a cuss word." And the chanting then switches to, "I don't think it's shit that I can't do," and then to, "I don't really see no way I can lose," to eventually, "I don't really think." I think the purpose here is to show that he's reminding himself of the things that he was taught growing up, and the way that it's portrayed here is almost as if he were saying these things to himself, and then he remembered that can't is a cuss word and changed his outlook. It turns what sounded like a negative song about trying to feel something or proving things to yourself to saying, "Bet, watch me do this." Overall, this EP was really dope. Like I mentioned at the top, this is my first time really listening to Mavi, and I'm just disappointed in myself for not listening to him earlier. I think as an introduction to him, this does a great job as well, because it's only made me want to go back and listen to his other stuff even more. Normally I list my favorite 5 tracks here, but since the EP is only 5 tracks, I'll just list my favorite, which is Town Crier, as of right now. However, each of these tracks are great in their own right. I look forward to hearing more from Mavi in the future, but I don't really expect anything right away. But when it comes, I'm ready. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this EP and what your favorite tracks are, and make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Thank you for watching, and please stay safe out there.